Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop. Now today I have a rest day after more than 2 weeks on the bike every day, and after my race yesterday I will take my time basically to put my bike back together for a training setup. As you can see over there, before you freak out, my top tube is not clamped with any force. Basically it's just hung up there. Easier to change both wheels, and I want to address some of the issues or questions you've asked me in the comments regarding tires. How do you choose your tire for the race, why do you change that, etc. So the first thing I want to address is, well, I've changed to brand new tires for the race. Why do I do that? Well, if you have a tire you ride on quite a lot, then after a while, mainly on the rear, you'll get a patch of rubber that's becoming completely flat. And with that flat spot, that's very bad for aerodynamics, as you would imagine. It takes a couple of watts right there. Then it takes away your puncture protection, which is essential for race day, and also it makes handling in the corners a bit weird. So that's the number one reason I've changed my tires for race day, even if they were all the same make and type, just a different color, same size as well. When I mount them, you will actually see that the new tire we have here on the front tire just yet is beautifully round, while the old one is a bit squashed. The casing gets a bit squashed as well and stretched in that direction because this is a very supple tire. It does that over time, and that's quite bad for handling. And yeah, the rubber wears off. So to repeat that, that's bad for handling and aerodynamics, which is not what you want for race day. Another reason, in case you have any major cuts or etc. in the tire, that's again very puncture prone spot right there. And I'm putting these tires back on now. These are the old ones. They're still good enough for training until they were basically completely off to the casing. Now for the tubes. Basically, as long as I've been using clinchers, I've been using latex tubes. Never really used butyl. And at first I've been using Vittoria latex tubes. So this is the pink one. This is Vittoria. Some of you have been asking about this new super special Silca latex tubes, where there's no such thing. It's this very same tube boxed in a nice Silca cardboard box, so no special thing going on here. I've had pretty good success with these, and apparently they save roughly 5 watts of rolling resistance per wheel, which sounds like a lot. It depends. For me it's definitely not as much because I'm a light rider. The more vertical load you have on your tire, the more rolling resistance you're experiencing, so that's a big factor. But anyway, the thing about these tires is they're bonded from different strips of latex, and to be honest, I've never had any punctures as such with this kind of tube, but I've had tube failures. So one thing that can happen, these are very well, I wouldn't say fragile, but the material itself is very soft. So if you have a sharp rim tape inside your rim, that can wear it off gradually, and that's one of the reasons I'm using, even though this is a standard clincher non-tubeless rim, I'm using a very smooth tubeless tape, again from Silca, just to keep that from happening. So that's one thing you need to consider. Then the other thing that happened to me is that the bond between the valve and the tube itself, this little rubber bit, this came loose, so I lost all my air pressure suddenly. Luckily, well, this happened 2 times. Both of the times the bike was just sitting there in the work stand, so that's also extremely lucky. But it's due to the bonded construction, I think. That's not ideal. So now I'm trying Challenge latex tubes. So this is a different brand, also Italian. These are more of a red color. They're much thinner. And the good thing about these is they're seamless, so there is no bonded place in them, and the valve is also secured. Well, it's much glued, or it appears to be much more secure in there, so hopefully these will perform a bit better in this regard. Another problem with the Vittorias is they seem to be stretched out too far, so they're too long. If you put them even very slightly inflated into the rim, the rim bed, the tube is just too long, so you get folds. The Challenge ones run a tiny bit on the tight side, so that's a good thing when installing, because you don't have overlap, you don't have pinching, etc. So yeah, they're excellent for ride quality as well. I reckon they feel a bit better than the Vittoria ones. I would definitely not go back to butyl tube or back to using them. Then another thing I want to mention, on the other pair of wheels that I'm using, the MV 7.8, those are tubeless ready, and I use the Schwalbe Pro ones there because this appears to be the fastest and best all-around race tire at the moment, which is tubeless ready. Yes, I'm sure some of you will say, but the course speed, well, yes, the course speed is good for time trials, but it's not grippy enough for general road riding and racing. So anyway, I wanted to use these tires on these wheels as well, just to have basically the same tire, so I don't need to stock all those different kinds of tires. But I ran into a problem because these are tubeless, so they fit tight, and they are just too tight to fit on the 4.5s. I could get them there, but it's very hard, and the courses just slip on so easily, so I decided to abandon that. And anyway, accidentally, the courses and races where I will use the 4.5s tend to run a bit rough on the roadside and the surface side. And maybe, well, the Pro one is fast because it's tubeless, so you have no interference or friction between the tube and the tire. But this is a standard, not very supple, vulcanized casing. So actually, if you're on a standard clincher, it might be a tiny bit slower, the course I mean, in terms of rolling resistance, but since you have that supple, non-vulcanized, tubular-like casing together with the Latex tube, which is also very supple, you might actually end up a tiny bit better in terms of suspension losses, or actually a whole lot better. It's not very easy to say, but in theory it should work like that. So I'm staying with the Pro ones on the tubeless wheel set, but also the Corsa remains my go-to choice in terms of regular clincher. Okay, the tires are now changed and the bike is ready for training. So at this point I want to address 2 more things that I've learned in the last couple of weeks. So the first one is about baby powder. So you might ask yourself, what does it have to do with the tires? Well, I previously have talked about latex tubes. Now, before installing the tubes for a race, I started putting a generous amount of baby powder on them, and that's for 2 reasons. For the first one, the tubes are then a bit easier to install, a bit harder to pinch, while installing. And secondly, I've already talked about the friction between the tube and the carcass of the tire. But if you put baby powder in there, it acts basically as a dry lubricant, so it reduces that friction a little bit, so theoretically you can get slightly lowered rolling resistance. Now, apart from this wheel set, all of the other wheels I owned are tubeless ready, and there seems to be a bit of confusion about road tubeless systems. So I've read some comments that people won't use it because, or won't use tubeless tires on road races because they tend to lose pressure, and that's why the pros will never use them. Well, that's simply not true. If you have a properly installed and maintained tubeless system with some sealant in it, it will hold the pressure for much longer than anything else. So this is a clincher tire with a latex tube. It will hold a rideable pressure, or the pressure that I ride, for I would say 8 to 10 hours. In the morning this will be too soft to ride, that's for sure. Tubular with a latex tube in it, pretty much the same, that's what the pros run. Whereas a tubeless system will hold a rideable pressure or a high pressure for days or sometimes even weeks. So on the TT bike, the last time I rode it was 4 days ago, and the tire is still rock hard, or not rock hard, but very close to the pressure that I left it with. And same goes, well, for this tire. This is a 30 mil. It has a much lower pressure and much larger volume, so the pressure loss is pretty much negligible over the days. I still check the tire pressures before every ride, but you know, that's just me being a bit picky. But a tubeless tire will hold definitely much longer without inflating. Okay, so yeah, these were some little technical bits and snippets that I learned over the couple of weeks regarding tires. Also, I hope I've managed to answer some of the questions from the comments. If you'd like to know more about this kind of geeky tech-related stuff, then don't forget to tune into the channel later on and subscribe. It's all for today. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.